So, I was going to make a follow-up to my Trump video the other day. It was just going to be a minute of me laughing my head off over him hiring actors to pretend to be his supporters. But then I heard about Charleston, and that just seemed like it would be highly inappropriate. So I see, for me, it's just I heard stories growing up. My father and aunt grew up, in the South, and my aunt still lives in Tennessee. And they told me about a time that when they were kids, they were ejected, kicked out of a church because they went to one in the wrong neighborhood. Children kicked out of a church. And I heard of other times when my mother and father were, treated not particularly kindly just because the person didn't like seeing them together. So I've heard about these sort of things, I've known about them. I've been very fortunate that I haven't experienced them in my own life. But it's becoming more and more obvious that I am an exception rather than the rule. Because it's just been getting more and more clear that we're sick. We are diseased, this country. We are we're we're the stubborn people who are coughing and vomiting all over the place, and yet we refuse to go to the doctor because no, I'm fine. It's just a passing thing. I'm not contagious. It's not going to hurt anybody else. So I just like I said, my aunt lives in Tennessee, and when we go to see with her movies like Lincoln or Selma, those are difficult to watch for a lot of people for a lot of reasons. And I remember when we left Lincoln in the theater, she was angry, not at anyone in the movie, but she was angry. She was saying that now even 100, even however many years later, he died for nothing. He just died for nothing. And at that point, at that moment, what I wanted to say was, so am I nothing? Is our family nothing? But seeing this and understanding that she lives in it, understanding that she probably hears about far more than we do. How many of these sort of stories don't make the national news? I am starting to get just a tiny bit of an idea of what she's talking about. I can start to understand why she feels that way. And it just becomes at some point it starts numbing you. It feels like there's like we've seen all this before. We have seen all this before, and so many times just recently, and it's always the same reaction. And this one is even more blatant and even more powerfully negligent, delusional. I don't know what to say about it, but like, people, like, especially, people like, Jon Stewart, like, one of those kind of people, say that they're angry, and they have every reason to be angry at people like, the Fox and Friends anchors and Rick Santorum and all the other people who are coming in and saying that this wasn't about race and it was about, they're attacking us for religion. For me, I don't even get mad at the talking heads. I can't get mad at them anymore. I honestly just have to stand back in wonder, really. I just stare in wonder at the sheer determination, at the dogmatic and zealous drive that keeps them from looking at anything having to do with race, and that makes them so determined to paint themselves as the victims, themselves as the persecuted. I just find it fascinating to watch, to see how far they will twist around themselves to make it look in their own eyes as though they are the ones under attack. And I have to smile and shake my head that they don't see the irony of that, because that is the exact reasoning that this attacker used. That was his thought process. He said that, you're raping our women and you're stealing this country and you need to go, another, Jim Crow Lynchian, jingoistic bullshit. And that's exactly the same thing that these talking heads are saying. They're saying that we are under attack. We are in trouble. They hate us because of our religion, and we need to protect ourselves. They don't see that that's the same thing that caused this. And that's why I get very frustrated when those sort of people also try to say, well, I don't see race. Exactly. You don't see it. You don't allow it to enter your mind. You don't look at it and understand what is happening. You ignore. You excuse. You don't see it. That is exactly the problem. This, Obama said in his statement on this sort of thing just doesn't happen in other civilized countries. And I think the biggest part of the reason for that is that they actually acknowledge it. They actually look at it. They actually talk about it. Like, take the Holocaust in Germany. This is, the atrocity that redefined the word atrocity. And they didn't try to hide it. That's the thing that makes the biggest difference. See, with us, we always talk about slavery or about racism or about prejudice in the past tense. We talk about it as though it were some other country, some other place, rather than the exact ground that we are walking on right now. We talk about the people who caused all of it, the slave owners and the lynch mobs, as though they were some alien species that existed only in this tiny bubble and vanished into the ether as soon as the Civil Rights Act passed, rather than our own ancestors. These were the people who brought us into the world. This was us. It was not them, it was us. And I can say us because I could very well be descended from slave owners. It is highly possible. But that is the biggest problem, is that we don't acknowledge that. We talk about it as though it were an isolated, like the same way we talk about all these news stories, as though it were an isolated incident that has nothing to do with anything that came before or anything that came after, as though it were just as if it were just a single mistake, as though it were just a little slip up, a fashion error kind of a thing. Instead of talking about it as a culture, as a system, as a permeating, as an identity, really. The slave owning mentality has not fully gone away because we've never fully acknowledged that it existed. Which is why the controversy over the Confederate flag has come up again. It's the symbol. It's not. People like to think it's a symbol of Southern pride or a symbol of states' rights. That's not. It's a symbol of a rebel faction that was defeated. It's the symbol of people who wanted me to live as property, who would have murdered my parents in cold blood had they ever seen them together. That's what a Confederate flag is. It's not pride. It's delusion. And it's hate. And we still cling to it and pretend that it's something else. Not just the flag, everything. We pretend that there is some other cause to all of the violence, all of the death, and we don't see it. Which is why I brought up Germany, I brought up the Holocaust. They have learned to move on. They have healed from the greatest tragedy, the greatest abuse that history has bothered to record. And they have done it because if you go to Germany, you will see it. It is all in the open. Because they realize that trying to push it away, trying to hide it, trying to ignore it, pretend it didn't happen, would be the greatest possible insult to the people who died and to the people who survived. So when you go to Germany, you will see it everywhere. They have memorials, they have monuments, they have museums, they have tours. And there's an exchange program at the school I went to, and from the school, there's one of the schools is in Austria, and the representative from the school told us that if you come to the program in Austria, it's mainly to learn the German language and culture, and part of that is education and tour through Auschwitz and through other places, because, as she put it, it's part of our history. It is something that happened, and we cannot pretend that it didn't. And that is the key. Because they don't say, this was them. They say, this was us. We did this. There is no excuse. And we must never, ever allow this again. That is how the German people have moved on. Because they show it to the world. They say, this was us. This is our history. This is part of what informs everything we do. This is part of what makes us who we are now. I just, I'm, I'm just, I just keep waiting for that to happen here, for us to stop walking away from it, stop turning our backs on it, and say, look, this was us, and we need